Charles Cavendish, a man whose moustache was as precisely trimmed as his military ambitions were grand, found himself on a blustery Crimean morning, perched atop his gleaming charger, staring down a valley that promised nothing but lead and damnation. He was, to put it mildly, having a rather dreadful day. Not, mind you, that Charles was a man given to dramatics. He was, after all, an officer in Her Majesty's finest, and officers, particularly those with such an impeccably coiffed upper lip, did not indulge in such vulgar displays of emotion. But even Charles, with his stiff upper lip and his even stiffer uniform, couldn't deny the prickle of unease that crawled up his spine like a particularly nasty spider. The orders, delivered with the charmingly detached air of a man ordering a second helping of plum pudding, were quite clear. Charge, straight into the teeth of the Russian guns. It was, Charles mused, a plan so utterly daft it could only have been concocted by a committee of particularly obtuse admirals after a particularly potent, port-fueled dinner. Beside him, young Lieutenant Finchley, a lad whose face was still stubbornly resisting the onset of whiskers, gulped like a goldfish. "Sir! Surely they don't mean us." Charles, with the practiced calm of a man who'd once faced down a particularly aggressive badger, merely raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Finchley! When has they ever not meant us?" He glanced down at his meticulously polished boots, then at the saber hanging at his side, its blade glinting faintly in the weak morning sun. It all felt rather unnecessary. All this fuss and bother, all these cannons and bayonets, when a good, stiff letter to the Tsar outlining the sheer absurdity of the situation would surely suffice. But no, the British way, as Charles had learned from a tender age, was to charge. And charge they would. A distant bugle blared, a reedy, insistent cry that snatched at the courage of every man present like a hungry hawk. Charles, with a sigh that was more a subtle expulsion of air than a true lament, adjusted his helmet. He thought, for a fleeting moment, of his Aunt Mildred's prize-winning petunias back in Surrey, and how much simpler life was when one's greatest concern was a blight on the blossom. "Tally-ho, gentlemen!" Charles Cavendish spurred his horse forward, leading his brigade into the valley of certain doom, his moustache, for all its precise grooming, perhaps a tiny fraction less perfectly stiff than it had been a moment before. After all, even a man as utterly unflappable as Charles had to admit, a charge into a hail of cannon fire was hardly conducive to maintaining perfect composure. But then, that's what made it so terribly, terribly British.